Welcome to the candle holder demo for Ceramics 1. Your assignment is to create a candle holder that uses at least one or more of the elements and principles of art in your project. You must add and subtract clay to your project, and your project must have a theme. The first thing you want to think about is what kind of candle you will be making this for. Is it going to be for a votive, a tea light, or a candlestick? If you're going to work with a votive size candle, these come in hundreds of sizes, so you're going to need to have a candle that you can take measurements off of. They're not a uniform size. If you're going to make your candle holder for a tea light, that is going to be a uniform size. Tea lights are generally somewhere around 38 millimeters or about 1.5 inches in diameter by about 16 millimeters or about 0.63 or ½ inch tall. Candlesticks, if you're going to make your project for candlesticks, first of all, you're going to need to make a set. These usually come in a set. And candlesticks are generally, the opening for your candlestick would be 2.3 centimeters or just slightly less than an inch in diameter. So you're also going to need to consider a couple of other things when designing this candle holder. First, how do you put the candle into the project? Remember, clay shrinks somewhere between 10 to 12 to sometimes 15%. And so you need to plan for that. The other thing you want to plan for is what this looks like in the dark. When you're in the design phase, you want to consider a couple of things when you're designing. First of all, you want to think about the elements and principles of art. So the first element here is lines. So you can see several lines inside of these objects. When you're designing, just consider the element of line. The second element that you should consider when designing is shape, and all candle holders are basically going to have one of the following shapes: either a cylinder, a sphere, or a cone. And so there's a couple of examples on this slide. One of the cylinder, that's the one in the top left-hand side, and then we've got two spheres. Shape is really important. So if you're going to make something like a lantern, like the one on the left, you may want to consider a tall, skinny candle. Now, at this point, this project should be somewhere between 4 and 6 inches tall. The one on the right-hand side is more of a natural or organic looking candle holder. That would be a little bit short by today's standards for this assignment. These here are both nature inspired, which is a great idea to use as a theme. I put this one in here as well as a great example of both theme, because it's got a nice fall theme, and second of all, because it actually is a cone shape when you think about the actual shape that they're using for this particular candle holder. So the element of space needs to exist in a candle holder. One of the things that you need to burn a candle is a fuel source, and then you need air in which to make that fuel source burn. So you need to have holes or space inside of your candle holder in order for your candle to burn. So this is a great example of negative space on a candle holder, and some of these candle holders are going to need to have multiple openings. You know, this one has a large opening at the top. It's also got some kind of decorative openings on the side. That is the negative space, or that refers to an area where there is no candle holder mass. So these are 3 examples of great uses of negative space. Again, you have to have some kind of hole in your candle holder for your candle to burn. And so using that negative space to your advantage. as a design element is a really great way to use it. The next element is texture. Texture is the surface quality or the feel of an object. Inside clay or in ceramics in general, we use texture a lot because it can give us a lot of depth on a project. It can give us a feel of something on a project. So texture should be included on your candle holder somewhere. So you have to use at least two elements or principles. The ones that I would use as the elements would be negative, positive space, because you need that for a candle to burn. And then if you wanted to use texture, line, shape, or space in order to get your idea across, that would be great. The principles, we're going to talk about those coming up. Balance and emphasis are the two that I would use. So balance, what is it? It's the equilibrium of various elements in a work of art. So it's actually a visual balance. Balance in art can be achieved in three ways. Balance, which can be achieved through asymmetrical, symmetrical, or radial balance, is a sense of visual stability in your work. So it can be achieved by repeating some shapes or by creating a feel of equal weight when you look at your project. Considering that, symmetrical balance is actually balance that's achieved through the equal distribution of elements on both sides of an imaginary line. So if we cut this project straight down the middle, you're going to see that both sides are going to mirror each other. That is symmetrical balance. The natural world gives us a lot of symmetrical balance because animals and the human face, they both have basically a mirror of themselves. So this owl here, if you cut it straight down the center, would have two eyes and it would have two wings. So that's symmetrical. Asymmetrical balance is balance achieved through unequal distribution on each side of an imaginary line. So if we cut this candlestick in half, both sides would be different. So it's kind of the polar opposite of symmetrical balance. So the image on the left-hand side is, although the project is pretty symmetrical in the fact of its shape, the design is asymmetrical. And then the one on the right is just slightly off of symmetry. The final principle of balance is radial balance. So that's balance achieved through both sides and the top and bottom having equal distribution on all sides of an imaginary line. So basically this is a round design. You'll see this a lot in natural designs. This is a really good example of radial balance because it's a flower. So it's got basically the same thing going around all sides of it. It's a very round design and composition. And so therefore it's a great example of radial balance. So another thing that we really like to use is something called emphasis or a focal point. So in a composition or on a project, it refers to the points of interest that pull your viewer's eye into the important parts of the body of work. So the one here on the left-hand side obviously is the cutouts of the birds, and the one on the right is the design. So a couple more that have emphasis. The swan is either the head of the swan or the wing of the swan. The purple image is, it could be argued that it's either the design on the top or the purple on the bottom. And sometimes your emphasis is the candle itself, like the one on the upper right-hand side. A couple more examples of natural objects, things from the natural world, which make great themes, are on this slide. Now on to a couple of student examples. This one obviously is asymmetrical. This is a couple of views of this particular candle holder. And I think the student was going for a fire theme. And that makes sense when it's on a candle. This example is a good example of a lantern. So it's got two pieces. It's got that round piece on the top that goes over the top of a tea light, and then it has a little base for it to sit on. One of the things that is a problem with this one is some of the holes are filled in with glaze because they were a little bit too small when the person made it and it shrunk. This one is a good example of a candle holder that has a large opening in the back to slide the tea light in, and then it sort of has this like root natural design to it that has holes throughout. So you could do that. Your hole does not have to be on the top of your candle holder. Again, this is another one made for a tea light that slides in the back. And then this one always reminds me of one of those Navajo Southwest buildings. It's just, basic shapes that are on the side, which is okay too. Couple more student examples. We've got one that has a very open top, which is fine for a taller votive candle. And then the one on the right-hand side is for a tea light. It actually has a very large opening in the back, although you can't see that on this picture. So again, the first thing that you want to think about when you're starting this project is think about what kind of candle holder you're making. So are you making it for a candlestick? If you are, you need to make a set. If you're making it for a votive, that one is going to need to be made for a particular size candle. So you may want to bring that candle with you or take measurements off of it. And then the third is it for a lantern? Possible theme ideas here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are tons of great theme ideas. Obviously, there are hundreds of candle holders that you could look up online. Please don't just copy someone's design. Try and make it your own. So what are we expecting for your drawings for the candle holder project in Ceramics 1? First off, I would go out to the internet and I would find 3 theme pictures to use as a starting point. Textures, things that you want to put on your project, just inspirational images. Next, again, just like the textured sphere, think about adding an interesting opening. Is it just a large opening at the top to let air in? Is it on the side? Are we sliding a candle into the side? What does it need to look like structurally? Okay. Then finally, you're going to draw 5 finished thumbnail ideas that include a well-developed theme. So there's lots of different ideas, natural things, mechanical things, whatever you want. You're going to draw 5 of those finished ideas into your sketchbook. One of those drawings you will execute as the project. So the first thing that you want to remember when you're drawing on this is you need to use at least one or more of the elements of principles. So let me remind you of those. It's line, shape, color, texture, and value. And then the principles are balance. You could use repetition, you could use emphasis. Any of those things would be fine. After your design is approved, or that first set of 5 images, then you're going to cut one silhouette of the outside shape of your chosen form to size, okay? And then you're going to use that silhouette as a pattern to draw the final project exactly to size. So you're going to take your outside silhouette, you're going to put it down, you're going to trace it, and then you're going to draw on to your project exactly what you want to make. This is all going to be done before you start with clay. So let's talk about cutting out your silhouette for your shapes. So I would start with one of the basic shapes, either a cone, a cylinder, or a sphere. I probably wouldn't make your candle holder cube-like. That's going to be really difficult to do with coils. So I would stay away from the cube. What you want to do is you want to measure out your silhouette. So what you want to do is you want to take an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and cut it in half. Then take one of those halves and fold it in half. Take a ruler or a tape measure and measure 4 inches from the bottom of that. Make sure that you fold that paper in half and then draw half of your silhouette like we would for a paper Valentine's heart onto that paper. So once you have half of your silhouette drawn like the picture shown here, then you're going to cut it out using a scissors. Once you unfold the paper, you should have a basic version of your candle holder shape. So this is what it's going to look like from the side. Use this to trace into your sketchbook and draw exactly to scale what your candle holder is going to look like. So this is your final project, the one you want to make. Include all designs as they relate to your theme. For grading, this is what we need. You need to have 5 thumbnail idea designs. So these can be whatever size you want. Designs must be labeled with your negative space. Otherwise, we're going to ask you where are the holes in your project. They must all be complete finished themes and drawn completely so that we can tell what these are. That's for a total of 25 points. Then you're going to take and you're going to cut out your silhouette. So use either a cone, a sphere, or a cylinder to start with that silhouette. So draw that out on your paper like we discussed in the previous slides, and then cut that out. Use that then as a pattern for you to draw inside of your sketchbook, and then you're going to do a final drawing to scale. Once that is done, you're going to turn that in for 25 points. All of this occurs before you start in clay.